All right, so let's take a look at class activity 2L. Now this is where we're going to really try out our ability to draw the fractions, to interpret the fractions, to interpret the wholes, and then to draw them so that we can use our understanding and making sense of the problem to solve it instead of relying on procedures and algorithms that we may have learned before. So let's take a look at problem 1, and I'm hoping that you've already looked at it so that you're listening to this explanation after you've tried to play with it on your own and you've tried to figure it out on your own. So let's take a blank piece of paper and imagine that it is 2/3 of some larger piece of paper. So if we have a blank piece of paper, I'm going to draw it out, and this is 2/3. So this is the number of pieces that you have, and this is number needed to fill the hole. All right, so number of pieces that you have, number needed to fill the hole. So if you have 2 pieces in there, so it's actually made up of 2 pieces. Each one of them is 1/3 of the whole. Now the whole is our imagined piece of paper, some larger piece of paper. It's not the piece of paper that we see, but it's some larger piece of paper. So now it's asking us to fold our piece of paper to show 1/6 of the larger piece of paper. So how do we fold this so that instead of thirds, which we know what's a third, we actually need 1/6? So if we need 3 of these pieces to fill the hole, how is that going to compare to the pieces that you need 6 of to fill the hole? Right. So if this is 1/3, you need 3 of these. If you need 6 of other pieces, it's going to be these pieces, because for each third, you're going to need 2 of these. So these are going to be 1/6. So if we want to fold the paper, we could fold it down the middle into 4 pieces, and each one of these will be 1/6 of the larger piece, of the larger imagined piece. So how does this appear as an equivalent fraction? Well, we could say that 2/3, if we cut the pieces into 1/6, we're making twice as many pieces. We will need twice as many pieces to fill the hole. So we would need twice as many pieces to fill whatever that piece of paper is as well. So what we would be representing here in our piece of paper is 4/6. So we could then also look at cutting the piece of paper we have into 4 pieces, and each one of those is 1/6. All right. Now let's look at number 2. Again, if you should have tried it on your own before you listen to this so that you can try and make sense of it and draw it on your own. There are lots of other ways to solve it, so that your solution may very well be absolutely correct and certainly based on understanding. So I'll just show you one of the solutions. Jean has a casserole recipe that calls for 1/2 cup of butter. Jean only has 1/3 of a cup of butter. Assuming that Jean has enough of the other ingredients, what fraction of the casserole recipe can Jean make? Make math drawing to help you solve this problem. Explain why your answer is correct. In your explanation, attend carefully to the unit amount that each fraction is of. In solving the problem, how did 1/2 and 1/3 appear as equivalent fractions? All right, so we have a casserole recipe, and it calls for 1/2 a cup of butter, and Jean only has 1/3. So we have the recipe calls for 1/2, and Jean only has 1/3. So how can we compare and figure out how much of the recipe Jean can make? Well, 1/2s and 1/3s are different. Both wholes that we're talking about are of a cup. So is there any way that we can cut the cup up so that we could be able to get a half, and a third. Well, it seems to me that if we cut the cup into sixths, we'd be able to figure out how much of the recipe Jean has. So these are sixths. So this is 1/6 because you need 6 of them to fill the hole. Now Jean, the recipe calls for this much. That's the recipe. What the recipe calls for is 1/2 of the cup. And it's actually highlighted. This is what the recipe calls for. Now Jean only has this much. Let me actually do that in red to be consistent. Jean only has this much. So let's focus now on that particular piece of the picture. If what she needs is outlined in green, and what she actually has is outlined in red, how much of the recipe does she have? Well, the recipe, we're counting in thirds, right? And she has 2 of them. So she has 2/3 of the recipe. So what we were talking about here, when the last question in solving this problem, how do 1/2 and 1/3 appear as equivalent fractions? And that's right in this green area. So 1/2, we actually expressed it as 3/6, and 1/3, we expressed it as 2/6. And we said of the 3/6, we have 2/6. So we have 2/3, pardon me. So let's do the last problem on this in this section, in this activity. And again, you should have worked on this before listening to the rest of the explanation. 1 serving of sugar bomb cereal is 3/4 cup. Joey wants to eat 1/2 of the serving of sugar bombs. How much of a cup of cereal should Joey eat? Make math drawings, explain your answer, and attend to the whole. And then solving the problem, how does 3/4 appear as an equivalent fraction? So 1 serving of sugar bomb cereal is 3/4 cup. So if this is our cups, this is our cup. This is cup. And it's 3/4. So each quarter, if we cut it into quarters, we have, so this is 1/4. We need 4 of them to fill the hole. And a serving, pardon me. The serving is 3/4 of a cup. Now, this is 1 serving of the cereal. Now, Joey wants to eat 1/2 a serving. He only wants to eat 1/2 of this serving. How much of a cup should Joey eat? Well, we're trying to cut the cup into quarters and into halves. And into further, the 3/4 into a half. Right? So we need to figure out how we can cut up this particular serving, this particular cup, into smaller pieces so that we can actually be able to see all of those pieces. So it looks like in here, in that piece, we cut a quarter into halves. So into half. So what happens when we cut a quarter into half? Well, we need 4 of them to fill, 4 quarters to fill a hole. And if we double that, or if we cut the pieces into half the size, we will need 8 of them. So let's see if we can cut the cup into 8ths and see if we can redo this same problem and outline what it is that is going on now having 8s. 1 serving of Sugar Bomb cereal is 3/4 cup. So this is still our serving. It's 3/4 cups. Joey wants to eat 1/2 of the serving. So Joey wants to eat, let's take this half. And I'm going to highlight it and shade it in red. Eat. How much of a cup of cereal would Joey eat? How much of a cup of cereal? This is a cup. So how much of a cup of cereal? What size pieces are we looking at here? Well, each one of these pieces you need 8 of to fill the hole. So we're looking at 8s. And how many of them do we have to eat? So we have 3 8s. All right. Again, if any of these problems don't make sense, make sure you connect on Zoom during any of my office hours this week.